Hello and welcome, my friends, to Genealogy Gems Podcast episode number 300. I'm Louise Cooke, and I'm so glad you're joining me here today. We are celebrating the 300th episode of the Genealogy Gems Podcast. You know, I founded this podcast back in 2007, and back then you had to use iTunes on your computer to get the episodes and to get them onto your iPod. You had to synchronize it with your iPod. Now, Apple's iPhone actually debuted in 2007. It was just the same year, but we were a long ways off from getting the Apple Podcast app, which didn't come out until about 2012. So the process was a lot more complicated back then, but many people figured it out. And I know when I went to the early genealogy conferences early in my career, I spent most of my time sitting in the exhibit hall just explaining to people what in the world a podcast was. And even more challenging, how do you get access to it? But you all persevered, and I really appreciated all the wonderful listeners that got on board right from the very beginning. I thought it would be fun, or maybe just a little bit embarrassing, to go back and listen to the first episode. I'll play it from the beginning. It's complete with the original theme music for Genealogy Gems. I know some of you will recognize it. I had somebody write me once and say, "It sounds like you're doing a newscast." Well, in a way, we kind of were. We were doing genealogy news, but a whole lot more. You know, our motto here has always been the best information, innovation, and inspiration for doing genealogy. And I hope that you have found that over the years. And so let's go back and take a listen to episode 1. And in it, I kind of explain what I had in mind in trying to get it started. I think my voice sounds a lot higher, maybe. To me, I sound younger. I was a lot younger. It was 18 years ago. And in this episode, I share my first gem, which I was really excited about doing. It was a brand new idea, I think, to many, many of the listeners. And then after I play it, I'm going to come back and give you an update on that gem. And then we'll continue down memory lane. Now, this only goes about 8 minutes. Episodes were a lot shorter back then. So here's episode 1. Welcome to Genealogy Gems Podcast. I'm your host, Louise Cooke. My goal in creating this podcast is to provide you with inspiration and innovation to help you get the most out of your research time. There's never enough time to work on your family tree, is there? I'll never forget being turned on to Ancestry.com back in about 2000 and being up until 3 o'clock in the morning collecting data on my ancestors as fast as I could. I must have spent about, 8 hours straight that night working on genealogy, and things have changed a lot since then. While I make the time to research nearly every day, the time is usually squeezed in between driving my youngest daughter to school and doing household chores and all the other thousands of things I do during the day as a homemaker. But family comes first. So when I have some precious moments to dig into my roots, I want to make sure that I'm mining gold nuggets and not dead ends. We all know that genealogists are some of the nicest, most helpful people. I mean, whenever I've put a request out there on the internet, there's always been somebody who's been willing to photograph a tombstone or do a lookup in a book that's hard to find or that isn't in my location, and they're always just wonderful. Well, I really want to give something back. So this podcast is my offering to you. I hope to be publishing the podcast on about a weekly basis. I'm new to all this podcasting, and I am really excited about the possibility of expanding my genealogy community. Sometimes our neighbors and our loved ones or our closest friends really aren't into it, but there's nothing better than communicating with others who are just as excited about it as you are. And certainly that's true for me. I definitely want to hear from you. I want to get your feedback and your ideas and your suggestions. So you can email me at genealogygemspodcast@gmail.com. Here is your first genealogy gem. Have you ever gone to a website that has had dozens of links on it that look really promising, but you can just imagine having to spend hours and hours combing through the different documents attached to those links, trying to locate your ancestors? A really good example of this is not too long ago, I was working on my Lynch family, my Irish roots in Wisconsin, and I went to the Gen website for Polk County, Wisconsin. If you're not familiar with the Gen websites, they're through the rootsweb.com network, and they're just a wonderful resource put together by county where volunteers manage these websites and put as much information out there as is available to them and that others make available to them. So they're a great resource. Anyway, so I was looking up the Genealogy Gen website for Polk County, and I noticed there were all these wonderful links, lots of great information on the site, and there was no search engine. Now, obviously, a search engine is that little box that you find at the bottom of the page usually that says search, and you can type in a name or a criteria of what you're looking for, and it will take you to locations within that site that have information that you've asked for. But in this case, there was nothing. So really what I was faced with was hours of slogging through all the different links, clicking on them, going through the pages, looking at my ancestors and hoping to come across something, and hoping that I wouldn't miss an important page, that I missed a link or something. So here is a wonderful gem that I've used that I think is going to save you hours and hours of time and really help you focus in on your search when you come to a website like this. Go up to the URL field. It's at the top of your internet page, your internet browser, and it's going to show you the website location that you're at. Do this from the home page. So I went up there and I clicked so that it highlighted the entire URL for the home page of the Polk County Gen website. And I hit Control-C on my keyboard. What this does, it's a really quick tip for copying any kind of text that's on your screen that you've highlighted. And it puts it on your computer's clipboard so that it's there and you can paste it anywhere you want, into another document, into another program, whatever. So I've Control-C clicked on the URL, which is the address, www.rootsweb, whatever it is. From there, after I've done that and put it on the clipboard, I go to google.com, which of course is just about the most popular search engine out there. In the search box at the top of google.com's homepage, I just clicked on it so that my cursor was in there and did Control-V. This is going to paste the URL from the website that you were previously looking at, that you copied. So in this case now, I have copied into the search box on google.com the web address, the URL address for Polk County's Gen website. Now, press your home key on your keyboard. This takes your cursor to the front of the address that you just pasted in. Now you can type anything that you want. What I did was I typed the name Lynch. So I typed Lynch, hit the spacebar once, and then typed the word site, S-I-T-E, as in the site that I want to try to find the keyword Lynch in. Then enter a colon on the keyboard. So now my search criteria in google.com looks like Lynch space site colon and the web address that I copied in. Hit enter. Wow. I immediately got 3 search results. Now there could have been thousands. If there were tons of Lynches on the Gen website, there would have been thousands. But in this case, there were only 3 locations where my surname showed up on their website. And it looks just like the same search results you'd get on any kind of a Google search. You can click on them, it will take you to that page, and there you find Michael Lynch, my great-great-grandfather, living in East Farmington in Polk County, Wisconsin on the Gen website. Think of the possibilities. This can really speed up your searching of various websites that are out there. And think of the different types of keywords that you could search on. Not just the surname of Lynch, but I can do Lynch +, Farmington, and then space, site, colon, and the website address, And now I'm only going to get a Lynch that's living in Farmington, or that Farmington is mentioned with the name Lynch on the same page. So if you have a Smith as your last name, and perhaps there were thousands of results the first time that you used this technique, but you happen to know that your Smiths live in East Farmington, you could go back and revise that search that you did in Google.com by adding a plus sign and whatever it is you know about them, a town name, an occupation, whatever you think you might be looking for on that website, and that's going to hone in even further. Believe me, once you use this gem, you are never going to go back to struggling through hundreds of pages that have nothing to do with your family. Try it today. Well, that's it. The premier podcast of Genealogy Gems Podcast. I'm really excited. This has been a lot of fun. It's gone by quickly. I'm going to keep them fairly brief because, I don't know, if you're like me, as soon as I hear a really good tidbit, I want to turn off the TV or the podcast or whatever it is I'm listening to and run and go try it myself. And that's what I hope you'll do. When the program ends, run to your computer, give this search a try, and you will be amazed at the results. I hope it brings you lots of wonderful gems. Wow, that was a blast from the past. Things have changed a bit since then, but site search, which was the search operator I was talking about in that first gem, we used to call each idea a gem in the early episodes, you can still use that. Although these days, just about, of course, every website has its own search engine. So it's not as critical as it used to be. We used to, go to websites and they didn't have their own search engine. So being able to use Google.com to search a website that otherwise you had to browse all the way through was a big deal. But Google's search engine is really still the most powerful search engine. So even a website, my website has a search engine, but it's not as strong as Google.com for obvious reasons. They have a lot more resources. So I think site search is a great way to dig into a website, particularly if you went to a genealogy website or any kind of website and you were searching for something and you just didn't quite find what you needed. If you go back to Google.com and use site search, you can put in those keywords or those phrases and use the other search operators we've talked about here on the show, like the quotation marks around a phrase. Put those in, do SITE : and put the website in. And it's going to give you a really nice simplified results list just for that website. And more than once, I have found something using Google site search that I wasn't able to easily find using the built-in search engine on the website. So put that in your back pocket because I really think that that is a super way to just double check and make sure that you didn't leave anything wonderful behind. And in that gem, you notice I mentioned the plus sign. Boy, that tells you how far back this goes. Of course, that has gone away. So now what we do, rather than putting a plus sign in front of a keyword or a phrase, is we put quotes around it. So you put those quotation marks around individual words that you want, or a phrase like a name would be a great example. And that makes sure that the exact phrase, spelled the way you spelled it, in the order in which you put it, if it appears on that website, it's going to show up. So in addition to 300 free Genealogy Gems podcast episodes, so I looked this up yesterday, and over the years, I have published 218 premium podcast episodes. So those are only available to the premium members. And 229 Family Tree Magazine podcast episodes. I actually started doing that show about a year, I think, after I started mine. Allison Dolan was the editor back then, and she heard my podcast and went, "We need a podcast." But, very few people knew how to do it. So she contacted me, and it's been a wonderful partnership ever since. Of course, now Andrew Cook is the editor over there. So 229 Family Tree Magazine podcast episodes. And those of you who are longtime listeners, you probably have also heard my other podcast, Family History Genealogy Made Easy. I started publishing that, a year or two after I started Genealogy Gems. And it was kind of a side project I did as a partnership with another kind of a podcasting group. They were experimenting with having a collection of podcasts. Again, before podcast apps came out, it was a way for podcasters to kind of pull together resources and try to get the word out about their shows. So I created this separate show, Family History, Genealogy Made Easy. There are 44 episodes of that podcast. And in fact, it's still available. You can still listen to it. You can go to our website, genealogygems.com, under podcasts in the menu, and you'll find that podcast. And it's still on Apple Podcast. I just looked it up the other day. So, a lot of that content on that particular show is still pretty evergreen. You'll hear some things that have long changed over the years. But we had some really terrific guests, and we were really trying to cover the main areas of genealogy just to give people a good overview. So I think it's still kind of a fun show to listen to. So the grand total, 791 audio podcast episodes that we've published here since the beginning in 2007. And what was so amazing was back in 2007, when I published the show, I think I got on the homepage of Apple Podcasts. That's how few podcasts there were back in 2007. Because when you think about it, they'd only been invented just a couple of years before. And even then, they were even more cryptic than they became in 2007 as far as the setup goes. So you could actually end up on the homepage of Apple Podcasts. And there were only maybe 2 genealogy podcasts back then. So it was really fun to be in the very early pioneer days of genealogy podcasting. And I say audio podcast because, of course, these days, when we say podcast, we think of video as well. In fact, many people who start their podcast today, they record as a video and then they will also publish it out as an audio version. Because, some people like to just listen when they're on the road and walk, and other people want to actually watch the podcast. So here at Genealogy Gems, these last few years, we've been kind of merging the two over time. I have been on YouTube since before Google bought it. That was just a couple of years after we started the audio show, but you didn't think about it in terms of a podcast being on YouTube. So I had lots of videos I was creating out there, and then I had this separate audio show. And in these last couple of years, we've been kind of merging it together so that if you like to watch the videos, you can watch them. We tend to have them on various topics, and then those will come together in the longer audio version. So you can find over 600 videos on our Genealogy Gems YouTube channel. And there are actually a couple of hundred more on our website because those are exclusive for Genealogy Gems Premium members. So if you enjoy the shorter topical videos, you really would probably enjoy digging into the full-length class videos that we have. Most of those run about an hour. And now when we live stream our 11s with Lisa show, typically around once a month, then that becomes a video replay available to premium members as well. Lots of different tentacles here, lots of different avenues by which you can consume content. We want to make sure you're getting it the way it works for you. Now, as I was preparing for this 300th episode, I started to review all the past episodes. And let me tell you, if you feel like you have fallen down a rabbit hole doing your genealogy research, oh my gosh, I fell down a podcasting rabbit hole the last couple of days. I have been so blessed to have so many thoughtful, intelligent, and talented people on this show over the years. Many of them came on in the early days before most people even knew what a podcast was. But I really think that the smart ones understood that there was something here. The podcasting really was the future. It's a way to reach a very niche audience. When you think of broadcast TV or in AM radio, you're talking about wide-ranging audiences. But when you get into a podcast, you can really narrow down to exactly the kind of stuff you want to learn about. And genealogy is a pretty small niche in the scheme of everything that's covered in the podcast world. So it's a wonderful way to reach a targeted audience that really wants to learn about something very specific. You know, I think actress Louise Cooke was one of those smart ones, one of those people who understood early on that podcasting was the future. She's known for starring in the iconic Friends television series for so many years. She went on to produce what I think was probably the first genealogy-themed television series that was on a major television network, and that was called Who Do You Think You Are? So I want to share with you the fun that we had early on when she came on the show back in 2010, episode number 81. Hi, this is Lisa.
Oh, hi, Lisa. It's Lisa.
Hey, Lisa.
Wait, so your name is Lisa Louise?
That's right.
I had a friend who used to call me Lisa Louise.
Oh, really? What?
Yeah, it's just a made-up middle name for me.
So what's your real middle name?
Valerie.
Valerie. Ooh, yeah. I like that. Louise Cooke was so much fun. She is wicked smart, you guys. I don't know if she's got a doctorate or whatever, but she is wicked smart. And at the same time, she's so funny and just seems so naive and does the whole Phoebe routine. We just had a wonderful time. Lisa made several appearances actually on my show. Episodes 43 and 63, these were premium episodes. So if you were a premium member, those are still on the feed. You can still listen to those. And we did one of those with co-producer of Who Do You Think You Are, Dan Bukatinsky, and also had some celebrities who were featured on the show, come on the show, Vanessa Williams and Rosie O'Donnell. So I'll have links to all these fun episodes in the show notes for you so you can check those out. Now, while Who Do You Think You Are was probably the first genealogy TV series on a major network like Fox, ABC, NBC, CBS, Henry Louis Gates, of course, had his own series on PBS, and it was called Finding Your Roots. In episode 133, he came on the show back in 2012.
This is Dr. Henry Louis Gates, Jr. of Harvard University, and you're listening to Genealogy Gems Podcast.
Now, I could go on and on about some of the celebrities that have been on the show. It's just a lot of fun to have such a recognizable name come on and be interested and want to talk about our favorite subject, which is family history. Kathy Lennon from the Lennon sisters. They used to be on the Lawrence Welk show. I know we're all dating ourselves here, but she was on the show. An amazing family history story there. Her father was murdered, and what the family went through, she shared that, and how close she was with her sisters, and just an amazing story. And then I came to know their cousins, and they are the band members of Venice. I have to say, for me personally, that was one of my favorite interviews. Venice is really well known as a group, particularly on the West Coast, and they kind of sing in the Beach Boys type of style, that 70s soft rock. They are still around. They're amazing. Kip and his cousin, I think, toured with Pink Floyd the last year or two. They've done all kinds of stuff. You can find them on YouTube. And of course, their song, The Family Tree, is just iconic around here. And they were so gracious to give me permission to share their songs on the show for many years. I don't do it now because even though they have given me permission to do so, YouTube and Apple Podcasts and all the different apps, they go nuts when you have any kind of copyrighted music on your show that you don't own the license to. So I guess the composer or the musicians themselves, their permission isn't enough. So we're not going to play it today, but I really encourage you to go out onto YouTube or Spotify, wherever you like to listen to music, and go look up The Family Tree by Venice. I don't think I have to say anything else. It's just an amazing song. So those guys were awesome. We've also had Tim Russell on the show. He was a longtime cast member of Garrison Keillor's A Prairie Home Companion, which, of course, you could watch on PBS. And he did a delightful impression of Mr. Rogers. Check it out.
It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. Hi, neighbor. Do you know how special you are? That's why genealogy is important, to let you know just that. You're very special. And thank goodness for Genealogy Gems Podcast. That's a new addition to the neighborhood. I hope you enjoy it.
I love that. I love his impression. We've also had Darby Hinton on the show. Darby played the son of Fess Parker in the Daniel Boone series. That was episode 60. We've had Ali Salim on the show. He's the director of the film Sweetland. That was episode 30. If you haven't watched Sweetland, my friends, you've got to do it, okay? It's called Sweetland. It was directed by Ali Salim, Selim. A wonderful story set in the, I guess, late 19th century, early 20th century about immigrants to America. And I just think you're really going to love it. It's one of my favorites. I could watch it many, many times. Again, just wonderful folks who have been gracious with their time and come on the show. But over the years, we've also had some amazing folks at the top of their game in the genealogy industry. My colleagues have just been so gracious, again, with their time, sharing their expertise. Let's see, some of my favorites. Well, I have to put towards the top of the list, Darius Gray. Now, he might not be a name that you recognize, but my interest in Darius Gray goes back to when I first started really devoting tons of time to genealogy research. My kids were finally in school, and PBS came out with the Ancestor series. It was a wonderful series. They actually had at least 2 seasons. I bought both of them on VHS. I still have them. But it was this wonderful, thoughtful, comprehensive series about the work of genealogy. And each episode would highlight these amazing stories to really illustrate the results of using good genealogical methodology. So some of my favorite people that I've had on the show have been people that I was first introduced to in the Ancestors series. And I think if you go to YouTube, you could probably still find this. I don't know that it's still on the PBS website, but I think you could probably find it on YouTube. So Darius Gray talked about this amazing experience he had of genealogical serendipity at the Family History Library in Salt Lake City. And he's such a thoughtful, wise man. And I had the pleasure of meeting him at Roots Tech and interviewing him. I even got to film that interview. So I'm going to have a link in the show notes to the video interview. But here's a quick excerpt.
Seems like a natural thing for you, this storytelling.
Well, it is. As you were saying that, I flashed back to my childhood, and I can see my mom cleaning house, and we had a brake fret, and in the left-hand side were 3 drawers, and in the lower drawer were the family pictures. And they were in a couple of boxes, a shoe box and something else. And I was the kid who would always say, "Mom, may I, look at the pictures?" In my generation, you had to say, "May I?"
Yes, sir.
But then I'd ask her as I was looking at the pictures, "Mom, tell me the story about this again." And so I heard stories growing up and had them repeated and refreshed in my mind. It made the people come alive. It made their lives significant to me as a little kid. And so, stories are at the heart of it. It's not just names, dates, and places, it's the people.
Oh, I could listen to Darius all day long. He's a wise genealogist. Another wise genealogist who was also featured on the Ancestors series was Irene Johnson. I had her on the show, episode 82. Here's a soundbite from that.
When did you first start doing your genealogy research?
When I was 18.
What prompted that?
I grew up without any relatives except my mother and father and my 3 sisters. I never had any aunts, uncles, cousins, grandparents, nothing. And there is that hunger in you to know more. And my parents, of course, being married in Germany at the end of World War II, even during that time, had to prove they were not Jewish. And so they had to have certificates up to yin yang. And they had this little old box And the certificates were folded so much they were almost falling apart. And I remember being on the floor of the living room on my hands and knees and putting these carefully on the floor so that they wouldn't be torn, and trying to make sense of who fit where. Who are my mother's parents, and who are my father's parents, and who are the grandparents. And it was such a deep yearning to know. And where did they come from? And thank goodness I'd had Latin in school, and I could read my father's certificates and some of my mother's because I knew enough German to understand. And I've always had that hunger because I didn't know the people.
My family's very much the same. It's very, very small in terms of immediate relatives. And boy, it's awful nice to find out that you're not alone. There's a whole lot more others out there.
Well, my father had a brother who went to Canada. And when I went to Canada, I got to meet them, and I've got cousins there. They're real. They're flesh and blood, and I'm still in touch with them, and it's wonderful. And my Canadian cousins have kept in touch with the ones still in the Ukraine, because my father came from a very large family. But my mother's family, they were scattered in the war, and she doesn't know what happened to them. Well, she had one brother that came here to Salt Lake, and I tracked him down, his family. But it's so sad when they are scattered and you don't know them. At least I think it is. I think most of us have a yearning to know. There are some people that don't, but I always wonder what's wrong with them.
Maybe just you've been a wonderful inspiration to all of us, and to know that there is so much more to learn, and that we can come to a big, huge facility like this and not be intimidated, but embrace it and know that they want to help.
Oh, don't be
And
intimidated.
so we can,
Don't. If you are, then it's because you're not opening your mouth and asking the questions. Ask the questions.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid. And if the first person doesn't answer you sufficient to your needs, then ask somebody else. And if that one doesn't, then ask somebody else. And keep asking till you find the answer you need. Somebody will have the answer, believe me.
Ever wondered what life was really like for your ancestors? With newspapers.com, you can explore the world they lived in through their eyes in their time. Search over 1 billion newspaper pages dating from 1690 to 2025 and uncover the stories that shaped your family's past. From birth and wedding announcements to obituaries and community news, these pages hold the milestones and everyday moments that connect you to your roots. But it's more than names and dates. It is about standing in their shoes. Picture reading the local paper that your great-grandmother once held, or stumbling upon a forgotten article about your grandfather's first business. These aren't just clippings. They're pieces of your family's story. Newspapers.com turns curiosity into connection. Start exploring today and see where your history takes you. Visit newspapers.com/genealogy gems. There you will get 20% off your subscription. That's newspapers.com/genealogy gems. Your past is just a search away. A name that is probably far more familiar to you is C.C. Moore. She is a genetic genealogist extraordinaire. She has really been a pioneer in the field of merging together genetic genealogy with criminal investigations and solving cold cases. And she was on episode 178. She's just a sweetheart, and I've known her for many years. Dr. Turi King. Now, again, you might not recognize her name, but she really stands out because she was the one who worked on the remains of King Richard III that were discovered and identified using DNA. In 2013, I was invited to speak at the Who Do You Think You Are Live conference in London. And Turi and I got a chance to sit down and talk. Oh, she's just brilliant and so interesting to talk to. So I encourage you to go listen to episode 152 if you're interested in that. It's just a fascinating look at, again, what the power of what happened when we got our hands on DNA and how it's just been uncovering and unlocking mysteries that have been around for centuries. Also on the show has been Dick Eastman, back in episode 107. We talked about cloud computing and computer security. And when you consider that episode 107 was published back in 2011, this has been on our minds for a long time. And it's still an issue today because it was really thinking about security. And of course, now we have the entire world of AI.
What's your prediction? Where's the future going in all of this? Oh, wise one. Tell us what is going to happen in 5 years.
I'm predicting a thing if you're recording this, because somebody with 5 or 10 years now will pull it out.
I can play it back and say, see what he said. Can you believe this?
But I do think reality is we're going to see more of the same. Storage costs are going to continue to drop. Storage 10 years from now is going to be peanuts, You'll buy a 1 terabyte hard drive down at Walmart for $1.98 or something of that sort. And I may be off by a little bit. But that philosophy, the computers are going to become faster. But the thing that really enthuses me is it's all mobile. We talked about cloud computing and getting access from anywhere. But I think the real future is in devices like this or similar to this. But when you're at the courthouse and you're looking up a record, you say, gee, I think I have, wasn't that his son? And you go like this, and there's your information, wherever you are. You don't have to run home and look it up. You don't have to carry those 3-ring binders like I used to. I mean, I had arms that looked like an orangutan from carrying all those things. This, to me, is the future. And in fact, I think desktop computers are going to disappear. Yeah, this is not the time to be investing in a company that builds computer desks. Yes. Because desktop computers, I really think, are going to disappear. Yeah. You've got things like this, and you take it home, you drop it into a little docking station, and it uses that 27-inch monitor that's there. And But you keep all your data here or in the cloud. This device will give you access to what you need at the moment you need it, wherever you are.
Krista Cowan from Ancestry.com, of course, has been on the show a couple of times. J. Mark Lowe, a delightful genealogist, has been on the show. I think we've had him on twice. On episode 274, he talked about marriage records and Gretna Green. Boy, if you want to hear good stories, he's got good Southern stories for you. I just love it. I'd say probably the other one I want to make sure that I mention in the genealogy category is, well, he's not really a genealogist, but his work dovetails with what we do. Dr. Robert Leonard, PhD. And in fact, Robert really spans both the celebrity interview and the genealogy interview because he was on from the genealogy aspect of he is a forensic linguist and an expert in his field. He is often sought out for the high-profile cases when they need a forensic linguist to come on and interpret, particularly like a ransom note, which is something we talked about in that interview, and the clues that you can gain about who a person is just by how they speak, how they write. And he shared an amazing story of how forensic linguistics solved a murder case.
The devil strip is a great example, and it's one of my partner Roger Shy's cases. The authorities came to him, and they had a ransom note scrolled in pencil, I think on a brown paper bag or something. And it said, if you ever want to see your precious daughter again, leave a certain amount of money in a diaper bag at the Devil Strip at 5th and Main, something like that. Mm-hmm. No cops, come alone, or daughter is dead.
Wow. Now, if I read that, I wouldn't even know where he was referring to because I've never heard that term before.
Well, it's interesting. I've shown this to a lot of people, this Devil Strip. What happens is you don't notice it. You can read this 10 times and you won't notice it. Matter of fact, the smarter you are and the better reader you are, the less likely you are to notice the word Devil Strip. And that is because reading is largely ignoring things that are not salient and important.
Oh.
Think about all the speed reading courses you've ever seen or taken or advertised. What do? You take your finger and you move it essentially down the middle of the page. What you're trying to do is just get the gist. You're trying to ignore. Sophisticated readers read in large gulps of words. Sometimes when I'm analyzing a document, I read it backwards, word by word. People don't normally notice this. They look for what they do understand. I mean, if you or I read something and there's a word that we're not familiar with, we don't stop dead on that word. We pass it by on purpose, and we assume that we're going to get the gist, and maybe we'll even figure out what that word means from the context. So there were a couple of other very, very obvious things in this letter. For example, cops was spelled with a K. Daughter was misspelled. Other K sounds were, instead of being spelled with a C, as they normally would be, were spelled with a K. And there's all sorts of reasons that people might do this. They might speak a foreign language in which the K sound is always written as a K, or all sorts of reasons. And it turns out that not all K sounds were written with K, and cops is a pretty odd word.
Yeah.
Now, a daughter was misspelled, but the word precious was spelled correctly.
Which isn't the easiest word, yeah.
Yes. Also, the punctuation was really well done. It was clearly somebody who was used to writing, but this is the kind of thing that you forget about. You, just like leaving your fingerprints, the person knew how to write a sentence. The person knew how to punctuate. The person forgot about that and concentrated on misspelling cops and daughter. So the first thing that Roger saw was that it was probably written by somebody who was trying to give bad information to mislead. So who would do that? Well, probably somebody who was well known in his or her community as an educated person.
I see. It reminds me of like a staged crime scene where some things are done on purpose with the idea of throwing people off.
It was that. We are the world's greatest repository of staged crime scenes because whenever somebody writes a threatening letter, somewhere in there they realize, wait a minute, I don't want to write this in my normal language, or at least often they don't. So they try to hide something about their normal language. And it's very, very interesting what people are consciously aware of to manipulate. We look for things that they're unconsciously putting in there, that they do not have access to manipulate. So Roger, I like to think that Roger immediately said to the authorities, 10 seconds, I remember it took us over a month. He said, I know that he did it very quickly. He said, do you have on your suspect list a well-educated man from Akron, Ohio?
Oh.
Sure, they said. A well-educated man from Akron. Now, come on. Like Sherlock Holmes would say to the police, the person you're looking for, cane in his left hand and walks with a limp and did service in the Indian Colonial Service. So did he have a frayed sleeve on his left? Said, look, guys, just tell me, do you have a well-educated man from Akron on your suspect list? And they sure did.
Oh, amazing.
Right. And why was it Akron, Ohio? Because that is the only place where devil strip is used. Devil strip is that grass strip in between the sidewalk and the street. And it's a great indicator because most people either don't have a word for that strip or they have a word that is almost never used, but they think that everybody uses.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, it's a very good example, isn't it?
So was that the bad guy?
Yes, it was. That's right. They went and they showed the evidence that Roger had sort of deconstructed from the note, and that was the man.
But in addition to being an expert in forensic linguistics, you would also probably recognize him if you saw him, at least in his younger day, because he was a member of the group Sha-Na-Na. Can you believe that? Yeah, Sha-Na-Na. And we talked a little bit about his fun experiences doing that. But I have to say, I was mesmerized by the work that he does in forensic linguistics. And I think he too was kind of like light bulbs were going off as we were talking, because he was like, this really could be applicable to helping genealogists glean even more clues. You might have a letter or some writings from an ancestor or a relative, and those writings could actually give you clues to what their heritage is. It's just fantastic work. And then he introduced me to one of his relatives who is totally into genealogy, and we had him on the show as well. So that he truly was one of my favorites, just because I love, it goes back to our motto: information, innovation, and inspiration. And for me, I'm looking for innovation, things that we can use innovatively. Perhaps they are tools, expertise, methodology that is used in another avenue that we can use and apply to genealogy. I always say, some of the best genealogy tools are not coming from the genealogy industry. Many do, but some are created for other purposes. But when we can look at them and say, how can I put my genealogy thinking cap on and see how I can take advantage of this and use it for genealogy research? Everything from, Google to Google Books to Evernote. These are all things that were created and used for other purposes initially, but of course have tremendous opportunity for us as genealogists. And I think forensic linguistics falls in that category as well. Now, something else I want to alert you to, particularly if you're an avid reader, is that we have had a lot of terrific authors on this show over the years. And I want to encourage you to dig into the podcast feed and go back to past episodes. In fact, for many years, when Sunny Morton was first a contributor on this show, I asked her to do a Genealogy Gems book club, and she got some terrific folks on the show. So I just want to rattle off a couple just to kind of whet your appetite. Think about digging back into the feed. Lolita Tatamy, who wrote Citizens Creek, came on the show. Steve Luxembourg, I interviewed about Annie's Ghosts. He's been on the show a couple of times. And that book, which was about his aunt and how he did some investigative work, because his background was as a journalist, to determine what happened to her. I mean, so much of what comes out of Annie's Ghosts can be applied as genealogical techniques. So I encourage you to read that. Pamela Smith Hill didn't write the book, but she was the editor of the new Laura Ingalls Wilder biography called Pioneer Girl. That was a big deal when that came out. I read all the books multiple times throughout my childhood. So when Pioneer Girl came out, that was really exciting. And I was thrilled to have Pamela Smith Hill on the show to talk about that, her work on that. It was really extensive research. Again, it's like reading the Little House books, but then seeing side by side the genealogy and the family history that went along with it. Rick Beyer, he wrote The Ghost Army of World War II, how one top secret unit deceived the enemy with inflatable tanks, sound effects, and other audacious fakery. A fascinating story from World War II. I'm just going to dangle that in front of you. We had him on a video as well on YouTube, where he reads another story that he wrote there. I think it was A Plate of Peas, as I recall. Anyway, fascinating book, particularly if you're into military history. Got to read that one. Nathan Dillon Goodwin, of course, is a prolific genealogy writer. He wrote The Lost Ancestor and many others. So if you love a good genealogical mystery, got to listen to our variety of interviews with Nathan. Libby Copeland is an award-winning journalist, and she was the author of the book The Lost Family, How DNA Testing is Upending Who We Are. That book really had a wide appeal. It introduced a lot of people who had never thought about genealogy or DNA or how the two might work together. It really introduced them to what was going on in our world, in our neck of the woods. So The Lost Family was the name of her book. Orphan Train. I was just talking to somebody the other day, and they said, well, I don't really do genealogy, but I know that one of my ancestors was on the orphan train. Many people have ties to that. And Christina Baker Klein wrote Orphan Train, a terrific book. She is featured on episode 177. And J.M. Phillips wrote Lamlash Street, a portrait of 1960s post-war London through one family story. A really good book. I read it. And she also shared in that episode 265 the process that she went through in writing family history. So if you're interested in writing your own family history, that's a nice one to take a listen to because it's very inspiring. And she's going to give you some real nuts and bolts ideas on how to do it effectively and not get overwhelmed in the process. And two that you probably have heard of for sure, Tom Haig, who wrote A Christmas Cup of Tea. Oh, that's just a classic book. And he is so delightful. And he came on and we did it as a video. It was also published as episode 259. He read the book. And it was just tremendous. I mean, I think he was sitting in his kitchen and he read the entire book to us. It's a wonderful way to spend an afternoon in December, as you're getting in the Christmas mood, or if you need the Christmas mood right now just to get your Christmas shopping going, take a listen to Tom Haig's A Christmas Cup of Tea on episode 259. Or even better yet, I'll have a link and include the video version as well. And finally, Fannie Flagg. Tremendous author. She wrote Fried Green Tomatoes, and we had her on the show to talk about her book, The Whole Town's Talking, and that was episode 204. Today's episode is sponsored by MyHeritage, a global discovery platform enjoyed by 110 million people worldwide. MyHeritage has it all and offers a full-service experience that bridges your past, present, and future. The MyHeritage DNA Kit reveals your ethnic origins and finds your new relatives based on shared DNA. It's popular all over the world, and their constantly growing DNA database means that more matches to new relatives are just around the corner. You'll receive a percentage breakdown of your ethnic origins from 42 supported regions and weekly email updates as new DNA matches are found. It's also the leading DNA service for anyone with European origins. Make the most of your DNA results with a MyHeritage subscription and access advanced tools for genetic genealogy, like the theory of family relativity, autoclusters, shared ancestral places, and much more. Order your kit today at myheritage.com/DNA. Already taken a DNA test with another service? Upload your DNA data to MyHeritage for free to receive DNA matches and access new discoveries. That's myheritage.com/DNA. Now, I mentioned that I kind of charged Sunny Morton with the task of putting together our Genealogy Gems book club and lining up a lot of these great authors. We've had a lot of terrific contributors over the years, many of which kind of got their public start here on the Genealogy Gems podcast. It was Allison Dolan, the editor of Family Tree Magazine, who introduced Sunny to me at a conference many years ago. And Sunny just wanted to ask me some questions. She says, I want to get in the industry and I want to be able to, maybe do some speaking or some writing. And she's a wonderful writer. And so she kind of picked my brains for some ideas. And she's just delightful. And we click. I think of all the people and particularly contributors I've had on the show, Sunny is really the one that just conversation just flows. Our brains just connect. We come from different perspectives, but I just love this energy that happens. And we could just talk for hours and hours, which oftentimes we do. You'll hear Sunny for several years of the podcast episodes along the way. Other contributors, Diane Southard. So Sunny and I were at a conference in Florida, and we heard, I think actually I was in the exhibit hall, and Sunny went in and sat in on Diane's class. And I think it was probably early on, very early on in Diane doing public speaking. And she came back and she says, oh my gosh, you've got to talk to her. We got to get her on the show. I think she'd be so interesting. And she's doing DNA. So we sat down and we actually went out to lunch together and brainstormed, and she became a regular contributor for many years here at the Genealogy Gems podcast, helping to introduce all of us to DNA concepts. And of course, now she does Your DNA Guide and has built out her career on her own, which is just fantastic to see. Love that. Melissa Barker, the archive lady, of course, has been on for many years, and she shared all her wonderful expertise in archives. She started out as one of our listeners and reached out to me, and just a delightful gal, really knows her stuff. And so if you are interested in archives, check out the Archive Lady. And you can target their content by going to our website at genealogygems.com. Click on any post, podcast, video page, whatever. Go to any page. And the easiest way to do that is click Learn in the menu. Pick one of the items that you see there. What you see there is listed the most current content that's been published, and then it goes back in time. So that includes articles, podcast episodes, videos, premium content. Click on one of those and you'll see on any page that there is a category, a kind of a topics menu on the right-hand side on desktop. And you can click that and pick from any particular topic. So Archive Lady, it's probably just listed as archives. Click that and you're going to get a results page that starts with the most current, going back in time, everything we've tagged with archive. And so much of that content came from Melissa Barker. So that's a wonderful way to grab that. Of course, you can do the same by clicking the DNA category. You'll hear tons from Diane Southard and other guests, and Cece Moore we've had on the show. The book club is on there. And click military, and you're going to get a ton of our military minutes that were put together by Michael Strauss. He is a military expert extraordinaire, was so gracious in sharing his expertise with all of us here on the show. And his content is very evergreen because it's all about military history. And he provided so many insights and resources in all of his blog posts that he did. And he's been on the show several times. So when you're looking for a particular topic, that's the way to target, whether it's on this audio podcast or you're looking for articles or videos. Now, I was thinking about just some of my personal favorites. Things that we've covered here on the show. I've told some of my own stories. I've told the stories of other people. And I love story. So I wanted to share with you just a couple of some of my favorites. I would encourage you to dig back into the past podcast episodes and take a listen to. Of course, one of my favorite stories was sharing the story of finding my great-grandmother's crazy quilt in an old suitcase. And I just recently told that story on Krista Cowan's podcast. She invited me to come on, and she's doing an episode for each of the states, the 50 states, leading up to the 250th anniversary of our wonderful nation, United States of America. So mine was a story tied to the state of Arizona. It's not really about Arizona, but it was definitely tied to Arizona. Part of it happened in Arizona. So I won't tell you anymore because I think you should just listen to the story. But I'll have a link to the episode where I talked about that amazing genealogical serendipity event in my own life. And I'll have a link to the video version of me telling that story to Krista. In episode 217, I did kind of a story format where we just spent kind of a thought-provoking hour together exploring the Golden State Killer case and the investigators' use of genetic genealogy websites, and the questions that really raised about the ethics of using genealogy websites and people's DNA that maybe put it there for a different reason, and now they're using it to solve cold cases. We just did a deep dive into the questions that we face, the reality of the current DNA environment, and kind of what it all means for you. I had a personal connection to that particular story, not because anybody in my family was a victim, but I lived in that area of California at the time. And I just remember the fear that kind of ran rampant. So it was really, really nice to finally see closure come to that case. And I just think you'll really get a lot out of listening to episode 217 and hearing the details on the use of genetic genealogy in criminal cold cases. And episode 230, I kind of did a little detour from my normal format of the podcast, and I shared the story of Roy Thran. I'm just going to put a link in the show notes. You can go check it out. I really enjoyed putting that together stylistically, but also I just thought it was a very compelling story. So I'm not going to tell you the details of it. You can just go and take a listen. But one that I will tell you a little bit more detail about is episode 223. And we explored kind of the notion of being a bit player in everybody else's show. I've always kind of clung to that idea as a genealogist because we tend to focus on ourselves, our immediate family members, our ancestors. We're looking for them. But nobody operates in a vacuum, right? So whatever life events happened in our family, those are all intertwined with all kinds of people, sometimes strangers that we don't even know. So when I talk about being a bit player in somebody else's show, that applies really well when it comes to photographs and videos or home movies. Because so often somebody might be filming something or taking a photograph, and there in the background is your family or a family home. And it's interesting, again, when you go back to the idea of criminal cold cases, how often they'll look at surveillance video footage, and that surveillance video footage was supposed to be about, let's say, a storefront, and it's supposed to be to kind of protect the storefront, but it can see the road next to it and who's driving down the road, and it can see the store next to it. So it's picking up bit players in the show of the storefront, right? And so this idea really came together in episode 223 because I interviewed Dr. David Haas, and he shared how people in his family had taken home movies and it had tremendous impact, not just on his family, but countless families who appeared in these videos shot by his father or his grandfather that maybe didn't even realize they were being filmed. So as he went about the project of digitizing all of his home movies and kind of getting them organized and figuring out what he was going to do with them, he started to see all these other people. And they were in one particular community. So in that episode, he talked about how he was able to use this project to really bless so many other people by spreading it out and making it available. And he shared his innovative ways in which he did that so that others could find this footage. And he's got some pretty compelling stories of the impact that this had on some families.
We have films of our local swimming pool growing up in the 1960s, and there were lots of different people in this film. And one person was a young girl and her mother. So the young girl must have been about 3 or 4 years old, and her mother was walking her by the side of the pool and turned around and smiled. And years later, both her mother and father died in a plane crash. So now, many, many years later, I guess within the past 10 years, this young girl comes across the video and sees her mother, sees her in a movie that she had never seen. And she was just brought to tears and was just so, I don't want to say devastated, but she was so, amazed and appreciative.
I really want you to take a listen to it. It is so worth it. One of my favorite interviews, and one that I really took to heart, because I have a ton of home movies as well. My grandmother took them, I took them, and I have been organizing them and digitizing them, and I've shared that over the years. Definitely, if you're interested in that kind of thing, after you listen to episode 223, head to the website, use that category menu, and look for video. And you'll find lots of great information about digitizing your home movies, organizing them, editing them so that they are more impactful and they make more sense to future generations. It's really a worthwhile investment. And finally, I just want to wrap up this episode. I can't possibly touch on everything that has really impacted me over the years because it all has in totality. I hope in some way that it has impacted you in a very positive way, in a way that's blessed you and your family. I would say that one of the most impactful items I ever received from a listener came from an episode that we did where we interviewed the author of a poem called Where I'm From. And at the end of that episode, we challenged you, our listeners, to sit down and think about writing your own Where I'm From poem. Of course, we want to be able to tell our own stories, right? And the story that we have in our brain, that's the only version of it. Other people who've come in contact with us, they have their version of it. But yours is so unique, and it's so personal, and it's so important. And I think we all need to make sure that we make time, carve a little time in your genealogy research schedule to sit down and regularly capture your own story. Well, listener Tom Boyer did just that. And I know that Tom still listens to this podcast. So hi, Tom. And I want to share your poem because it's just tremendous. We actually put this together as a video as well. So I'll have a link to the video version. I'll probably embed that in the show notes. But let me take a moment right now just to play for you Tom's take on the poem Where I'm From.
Home means Nevada. Home means the hills. Home means the sage and the pines. Nevada State Song. I'm from the indescribable rain-fresh smell of Nevada sagebrush out towards Pyramid Lake. Land of blue-bellied lizards basking in the sun and a donkey named Bambi. Riding a yellow school bus 20 miles each way, stopping at the Mustang River Ranch to get my buddy. Mom would never let me play at his house. I'm from a diesel submarine and a submerged trip off Vietnam. 80 shipmates, a dozen or so I remember today. And another 20 plus years as a Navy Reserve officer. Hundreds of shipmates, Seabees, few of them I can remember. I'm from my high school sweetheart's family. A father-in-law I never knew, a mother-in-law who was amazingly upbeat regardless of the hand she was dealt. 3 sisters-in-law who were more like daughters, and a brother-in-law taken from us much too early. Cancer. Finally, I'm from my own clan, parents of the greatest generation who lived a depression and a world war, keepers of the American dream, an older sister to keep me in line, a younger brother to pester. Extended family that includes yet another brother-in-law taken from us much too early. Cancer. 2 of my own and their 4 offspring, keepers of where I'm from. Tom Boyer in Olympia, Washington. Thanks a lot.
Like I said, the Genealogy Gems podcast was created to share what I think is the most important information for your genealogy research, innovation, and innovative ideas that will help you find even more, and inspiration to really keep you inspired to continue to grow your family tree. I found Tom's poem very inspiring. I hope it's inspired you to carve out that little piece of time for yourself and your story, in addition to all the wonderful, captivating stories in your family tree. Thank you so much, my friend, for joining me here every episode for Genealogy Gems Podcast. I thank you so much for listening, my friend, and I'll talk to you soon.